11:56. Reaching into his shirt, Julian pulled out the stone that hung on the leather rope around his neck. Leaving it in its silver webbing, he laid it into his shaking hand. In the gray light, the crystal didn't sparkle or shimmer. Silent and cool, it lay in his open palm. Once, the stone had been in her hands. There was sun then, a sparkling mist of dreamlike bliss, the beginning, not the end. Or so he thought. Was this the end, or was it the beginning? The crystal oscillates 1,000,000 times a second, the cook told him. A cook, a magician, a warlock, a wizard. And you oscillate with it. You are the oscillator. You are the chain reaction, the chemical ignition, the voltage soaring through your own life. Go, Julian. The time has come for you to act. There is no other time. Until the end of time. Running out of time. 11:59.
Welcome to the Good Reading Magazine podcast, sponsored by Pantera Press. Good Reading is a monthly magazine dedicated to books and reading and aims to help readers discover their next favourite book. You can find out more about the books discussed on today's podcast at goodreadingmagazine.com.au.
Welcome back to the Good Reading Podcast. My name's Emma Harvey. Now, you've likely seen Paullina Simons' books lining the shelves of your local bookstore, and many of you may have even had the privilege of losing yourself in the pages of her sweeping historical fiction. Paullina is a master of all styles and genres, having written 14 novels, 2 non-fiction books, and 2 children's books. She is perhaps best known for her best-selling Tatiana and Alexander series, which has captured the hearts of readers around the world. Now she is back with a new set of books, the End of Forever trilogy, which so far includes The Tiger Catcher and The Beggar's Kingdom, to be joined by the third and final book, Inexpressible Island, this November. We are delighted to have Paullina with us today. Paullina, welcome to the Good Reading Podcast and welcome back to Australia.
Thank you, Emma. I'm so happy to be here. Thank you so much for having me on your show.
How are you finding it here? What have you been up to?
I always love it here. Well, work from dawn to dusk, and then I'm out of Paullina by about 7:30 p.m., so right in the middle of my book events, and then I can't sleep past 4 a.m., so I won't go outside and I wander the streets, and then I but I can't sleep. So we're hoping maybe I'll get out of the jet lag soon.
Oh, of course. What are you doing on the streets of Sydney at 4 a.m.?
Because it was just empty, just walking, looking at the stores,
Wandering around.
Yeah.
Spooky. And I imagine these warm Sydney winters are a little bit different to where you grew up, because for 10 years you were living in a small fishing village in Leningrad. Is that correct?
Well, I was living in Leningrad, which is actually a big city, but the fishing village was where I spent my summers, but still they were not warm.
Right.
And Sydney for me, it's unusual for me to come to Sydney when it's kind of cool. It's actually gorgeous here today and yesterday, but usually I come here during your warmer months. So the fact is, when I was packing, I just didn't know what to do. All I have is sandals and sundresses.
T-shirts,
yeah.
Well, I was wondering, to take you back to Leningrad and to Russia at that time. Do you have many memories still from back then?
Yeah, I have a lot of memories, mostly good and maybe some not so good. But yeah, as a kid, I remember leaving, and I certainly remember my summers in Shepilova, which is the little village on the Gulf of Finland. And I remember my years with my mom when my dad was not with us. In our communal apartment, so I remember it quite well.
Was your dad work at a workers' camp?
Yeah, he was in the Gulag. Yeah, so he was arrested in 1968 after the Soviet Union invaded Czechoslovakia, and he and his friends used to meet and talk about all things political, but clearly they were talking about things political sort of with the anti-government slant. and the man right next door to that room was like a KGB informer. So in the end, they spied on them, listened to them, and then just arrested a whole bunch of them, my dad included.
Dobbed him in.
Yeah.
Goodness. And at the time, you were a very avid reader, even back then.
Yeah, I was. I was always I was an avid reader, which sounds really good now, but really there was nothing else to do. I wasn't like, oh, Paullina, you could watch Breaking Bad on TV or Game of Thrones or Looney Tunes, but no, I'm going to just read. No, it wasn't like that. It was that there was nothing else but reading, so that's what I did.
Oh, fair enough. What kind of books were you into?
So I read, I guess between the time I was 5 and the time we left, I must have read all of Jules Verne, and I read Alexander Dumas, and I read Charles Dickens, and I read Victor Hugo. I read Les Miserables when I was 8 years old. My father gave that book to me. He said, yeah, just read it. Whatever. Yeah, good luck with that. Yeah, but I never forgot that book, though.
That's very advanced reading.
Well, I didn't understand most of it. It was just words.
It's just all there was.
Yeah. All the adult stuff went completely by my head. But I knew what I knew. I knew what I loved, and I certainly got the adventure part. I got the intrigue. I got the Paris stuff, the London stuff. Oh, I read some books about the American prairie that I've never forgotten, or Jack London, like all that stuff with Alaska. Never forgot that.
So did they put an image in your head of what you thought America was like?
Well, only a little bit. I never read books about New York, okay, but I did read books about the American prairie, and they certainly put images in my head of what Paris was like and what London was like. Absolutely.
And so when you were 10 years old, you and your family immigrated to the US.
Yeah.
And
with a little detour in Vienna and in Rome. So we lived in Rome until we waiting for permission to enter the United States. And then when we finally got it, we came to the United States. Yeah.
And you've spoken a little bit about the culture shock, especially at such a young age.
Yeah.
And you said that you'd always dreamt of being a writer, but that when you came to America, the change of language and the loss of culture meant that you sort of stopped writing and stopped reading for a little while.
Yeah.
Even.
Oh, yeah. Well, you know why? Because I discovered this amazing thing called American television. Who wants to read a book when you have Happy Days or One Day at a Time or Mod Squad? I lived on Bonanza and and The Odd Couple. That was like my whole life. And I know my Russian family was like, you're going to amount to nothing because all you're doing is watching TV. No, that was right. But I wanted to amount to nothing because all I wanted to do was be entertained. That was the thing. It was amazing.
And you've also said that at times you felt like a bit of an outsider being...
Yeah, of course. You can't help that because you really want to be just like the beautiful kids in the school, wearing their beautiful Lees and Levi's and having their perfect hair. And there you are. You're like wearing bell-bottoms when bell-bottoms are out of style for 3 years. You're wearing somebody else's hand-me-downs. I don't think I ever had a new pair of jeans until I was 18 or 19 years old, and I bought and paid for it myself, and that's something. So when you're that kid, how fit in are you going to feel? You're just not going to. That wasn't great. So then I made friends with like the Russian kids in the school, but I didn't want to be friends with them. I wanted to be friends with all the nice American kids. In 9th grade, I did have a really good year that year because I made friends with like the valedictorian and the salutatorian of the class, and they were nice girls, and so I raised my game up a little bit by hanging out with them. So that was cool.
Nice. Yeah, the social hierarchy of high school.
Yeah, you remember
Don't
that well.
It.
Yeah, exactly.
And a lot of writers have said that their writing was born of being something of an introvert or something of an outsider. Did you return to writing in that time, or was it not until you were much older?
Well, so I wrote my first novel when I first learned how to read in English, and I wrote it in English when I was 12 years old, and it was 78 handwritten pages of a story that was a cross between the 3 works of art that I admired most, which was Star Trek, The Great Gatsby, and Rosemary's Baby.
Oh, what a combo.
Yeah, exactly. But because I was 12, and I knew so little about life, in it the girl gets pregnant, but she loses the boy. The boy dies in the war, and she grieves for him, and her grief stops her from having the baby or giving birth to the child for 5 years. That was my story. She literally is pregnant for 5 years because she's grieving for the love of her life.
Oh my goodness. Well, I mean, even your novels now, they may not have the same absurdity, but they certainly possess the same kind of energy and drama and intensity.
And angst. Yeah, exactly, right. Well, that's what I say. I say the original story was all about grief and love and angst. And then I'm like, well, that's a lot like my actual stories now. Like, so little has changed other than the fact that I know a little bit more about human gestation, you know.
Well, I mean, that kind of writing, that style of yours has been met with such a positive response over the years throughout your career.
I'm so lucky. I'm so lucky that it has. I mean, you don't know when you're writing that it will be. You hope that it will be, but it means something to you. And this is also the only way you know how to write. It's not like you can just say, you know what, I'm going to try something else, something different. Like, I wish I could do things in my writing that other writers can do that I can't. So you're always a little bit envious of other people when they can do stuff that you can't, right? But the only thing that I can do is I can sort of vividly describe emotion as if it is a natural landscape, like the way other people may describe outdoor beauty or the way the lake looks or the way the sunset is. So I can't do that quite as well. All I do is describe how people feel, and you kind of hope that might carry over. And sometimes it does. Sometimes people respond to that, which I feel grateful for.
Yeah, that's such a good description.
Yeah, well, I had when I first was writing Tully, and I had a girlfriend. She gave me invaluable advice when she found out that I was writing. You know, everybody's writing a novel, right? And here I was 27 years old, and I said, Penny, I'm writing a book. She says, Paullina, can you just do me a favor? Can you please not write the parts that I don't want to read? That's what it was. And I said, well, I don't know what that is because it's different for everyone. But somehow I intuitively, like I knew exactly what she meant, right? Because when you're reading a book, there's certain things you just want. You just want to see on the page. And you like a book better when it has those things. When it tells you the things that you want to hear, but doesn't tell you the things that you don't want to waste any time on.
That's a good point. Yeah, and actually speaking of what readers want to hear, because you have such a loyal and dedicated fan base.
I really do, especially here in Australia. They just,
oh, hell yeah.
They're just beautifully passionate.
We love you.
Oh, they're just beautifully, but they're just like, they are amazing. And they look at me. I can't even describe it to you. Like, I could cry just thinking. They look at me as if they know me. I said, why are you looking at me like this? I said, because I'm so close to you because of the books.
Have you got any memorable fan moments?
Oh, I have too many to count. So a woman in New Zealand once got on her knees in front of me. Like, literally got onto her knees in front of the table at which I was signing and said, thank you for Tatiana and Alexander. This was early on. This must have been 2003, maybe. I was quite impressed with that. And then another woman in Poland brought me homemade moonshine. That was the greatest gift.
Nice.
She said that this is for you for writing these books. And that moonshine, I'm going to tell you, when I traveled with it, I had to drink all of it before I got into a plane from Warsaw to Gdansk. And by the time I got to Gdansk, 7 a.m., I was really in my cups, let me just say.
Oh, my God.
I got up. I said, I'm going to have a signing. I don't know what I'm going to say, you know. But I had to drink all of that moonshine. It was incredible. It was like raspberry hooch, you know.
Oh, my goodness.
Extraordinary. From homegrown raspberries, you know.
Delicious.
Yeah.
And these readers of yours are particularly excited?
Yeah, and so this is my first epic love story since the Bronze Horseman books. And I've been writing, of course, I've written, 2 follow-ups to the Bronze Horseman. I've written, Lone Star and A Song in the Daylight and Road to Paradise. So there've been quite a few books between then and now. But Julian and Josephine's story is sort of an all-encompassing thing, and it is one of those stories where you've got a modern component, and you've got a historical component, and you've got the epic love component. It's not a romance. I just don't want to fool anybody into thinking that it is what it is not, because it's not. a romance, but it is very much a love story, a true story of what it means to love another human being, and all the adventure and the suffering and the joy and the sorrow that comes with that.
A love saga, maybe.
Yeah. A love saga.
Yeah,
Yes.
certainly intense.
Exactly.
And now typically when we start reading a series, part of the deal is that we have to hang out for the writer to finish the next book.
Yes.
And there's a waiting game. But that's not the case with this series,
No.
because you've been rolling out 3 books, or you are rolling out 3 books over the course of a single year. What was the motivation for that?
Well, because we had them. I thought it would be cruel to make you wait when we had the books. Usually the reason why you wait is because the author finishes one book and then you have to wait for them to finish the next one. And that was certainly the case with The Bronze Horseman, even though it was a different kind of a story. Here there's one continuing story that it has a beginning, it has, 9 parts. So you've got a beginning, middle, and end in The Tiger Catcher. You've got a beginning, middle, and end in A Beggar's Kingdom. And then you've got a beginning, middle, and end in Inexpressible Island. But all of them together, all 3 books together, make one complete story. It's kind of like Lord of the Rings. If you read the first Lord of the Rings, it's not full. And certainly when you finish the second book, right, Two Towers, you're not done with that story. That's a little bit how Beggar's Kingdom is. When you finish Beggar's Kingdom, you're feeling like, oh my God, where's the rest of it? So it was a different thing. So that's why it took me 5 years to write them, because I had to see what that story was and how big it was and where it took me and how it finished and what the middle was. And because I did that, we had the books. And so we just decided to do this innovative, publishing thing.
Yeah, this is the era of the Netflix binge.
Well, exactly, right. Everybody wants their entertainment. They want it now.
They want it now, yeah.
And I also think waiting a year, probably it's just hard. Then you're reading so many other books. It's not in front of mind, right?
The
and
momentum.
then you lose the momentum. Exactly. Because you're already on to the next thing. The next thing. Oh yeah, I remember that book. What actually happened in it?
Well, I'm curious if you were writing all 3 of them over the space of 5 years. Were you going back and forth? Were you writing chronologically?
No, so I was writing chronologically. I mean, I had to finish. So I finished one story, but then I would do bits and pieces of the next just to see where the shape of it was. But they weren't filled out. So little by little, they had to get filled out. And then as they got filled out, they got bigger and bigger and bigger, because in order to make it real, it needs words on the page, So if you're writing with all your senses, like you experience things very quickly as you live your life, but to put it down on a page so that you can feel things and hear things and smell things, you need to describe them, and to describe them takes words, and so to make it real takes words. And I guess so as I was trying to make it real for you, the words kept getting
coming.
bigger and bigger. Yeah, and so the story was growing and growing and growing. Then there's like 500,000 words in these books now at the end of it.
I was thinking that even for a seasoned writer such as yourself, that's a lot of writing, and in not much time, actually. 5 years isn't
exactly.
long.
It seems like a long time, but well, I mean, for example, look at the Pulitzer Prize winning Donna Tartt. When she wrote Goldfinch, it took her 8 years. And it was one book, and it was only like 290,000 words. I mean, it's still a long book. 290,000 words is a big book, but 8 years for that, And here's sort of 3 books in the course of 5 years. So that's pretty good, right?
Yeah, that's really solid.
Yeah.
I'm wondering what your days looked like when you were in the throes
Real
of that.
long. So I would I don't know what I'm going to do now that my daughter is leaving home and going to college, but she really kept me on the straight and narrow, because I would have to drive her to school, which was like 7 o'clock. So I would be in my office at 7:30 in the morning, and I would start my day then, and then the day would go on till probably 8 o'clock at night. I mean, all day, like 12 hours a day in one place, sitting,
Right.
feeling like I was running a marathon. Because, your body is just sore from sitting. And yet, unless you sit and work, you really can't write, right? You can get up, you can pretend you're writing, but that's not the same. You really need to be at the place where the words are reaching from your hands into the screen and the computer. So
Yeah, that's a long slog.
yeah.
Actually, speaking of your daughter, do you use your family ever as like as mini editors or as sort of
Yeah,
easy
my
editors?
husband is my first port of call for all my stuff. He reads all my stuff first, and so. But think about that too. For me, he was the only one for many years who'd read any parts of the End of Forever books. No one else had read them, so I had no feedback from anyone. It was only him.
Does he give
At
good
first.
feedback?
Yeah, I mean, he's been an editor for 30 years. So,
great.
okay, he's editor of science fiction books, or spy thrillers, and maybe some horror books. But he really knows his story. He knows narrative. He knows character. He knows what works. And he also loves my books. That helps, So he's sort of on my side. He's not doing it to hurt my work. He's doing it only to help my work. So all of his editorial comments, I get mad at him. Why are you saying that? But he's always right, almost always right.
Oh, that's fantastic. So was writing this book different at all?
Yeah, I mean, it was real hard. I mean, I think it was one of the more challenging sort of periods of my life, both creatively and practically, like in my actual life. And the reason for that is because, I really needed to finish the first book, and we wanted to get it published, but the story wasn't done, and it felt like it wasn't done, and so we just didn't know whether we should publish it or wait till the entire thing was done before we figured out what to do with it. And so that struggle between how big it was growing and how big the story was and how much I still had to tell, and between sort of the fact that we needed to get the books out there and published, I'm not going to deny, it was a little stressful.
Yeah, fair enough.
You had to put all of that away. In the end, the only way that I could finally finish them is when I had to put all of that away and say that the story is the most important thing. And once I finish it, and once I tell it properly, the way it's meant to be told, then we can figure out what to do. And kind of that's exactly what we did,
Well, for many of your readers, these books contain these familiar themes of intense romance and adventure and turmoil, but it's also doing something a little new for you. Could you talk us through this?
Yeah, we can talk about that a little bit. It's not even that I used that as a device. It was, the thing came to me, so I had to go with it because this is what was offered to me. And the thing that came to me is when I first saw this story, I saw Julian. I saw him hurtling through time and space, looking for the love of his life, finding her or failing to find her, and being desperate and outraged. So I saw that sort of, I'm like, what is that? What is he doing? So I immediately saw this sense of that they had something together which he lost and which he has been intensely, desperately trying to regain and has been failing to regain it. Because he doesn't know what to do. That's what it felt like. Like he just had no idea how to regain it. But clearly the way that he was trying to change the past was by going back into the past and by getting a second chance to remake his life and to remake her life and to give them both a second chance at being what they were meant to be for each other. But he just didn't know what that path was, and so because of that, so that's how the element of this time travel came to me. It was that he was already doing it, and I saw him doing it. So it wasn't like I said, oh, what are my readers going to think? Because that's a new thing for me. That's a new element for me. But I just thought it was just a little bit of magical realism. And what I did is I grounded it in science, and so that it was kind of real, because I wanted him to be a skeptic as we were skeptics, and for him to overcome it and then us to overcome it.
Yeah.
I didn't want it to be like an I Dream of Jeannie thing where he just sort of twists around on his heels and clicks his shoes 3 times and says a chant, and then he's there. I wanted it to be a struggle, a journey, a struggle both of faith, so a metaphysical struggle, but also an actual physical journey that he had to undertake to get to the other side, and that's what he does. Actually, one of the examples that I liked from my childhood was the Wizard of Oz books, because if you remember in the Wizard of Oz, Dorothy does not get from Kansas to the land of Oz by magic. I mean, there's a little bit of magic, but what she does is she has a journey, and in every one of the books, there's a new journey. She gets to Land of Oz a different way every time. She doesn't go the same way, but there's always a path that she needs to undertake to get there, and I kind of like that.
Yeah. Well, so do you feel like you were bringing any of your reluctant readers who maybe were really tied to your romance novels and your historical fiction, and bringing them into the story through the similarly reluctant Julian?
Well, exactly. I was hoping that's exactly what I was hoping, that they would, those who might say, wait, what is happening? That they might, okay, now I understand. Most of my readers, though, are like with me, they're open. Yeah, they're open to anything. But of course, some are going to be like, oh, wait, what is this time travel? But people say that about anything. One time somebody picked up Red Leaves and said, I threw that book in the garbage after I finished reading it because it was in the romance section. I thought it was going to be a love story. This is the worst love story I've ever read. I'm like, all right, so it was miscategorized. That's not my fault.
So that's interesting. Where would you place this book in a bookstore?
So I guess it would be like I would just place it under regular fiction. I would, because it's not quite sci-fi.
No.
It's not, and it's not quite fantasy, though it does clearly have a fairy tale, elements of it. But I would say that most of it is just a contemporary and a historical drama that has this extra element of something that seems very real when you're living through it. So I've made it sort of like a very real life thing.
Yeah, absolutely. The magic and the mysticism unfolds very naturally. It doesn't take you by surprise in any way. It sort of just feels a part of the story.
Right, and exactly. And he's very skeptical himself. He doesn't think it's going to happen. And the gentleman who offers it to him says to him, all right, well, you don't have to believe me. Either I'm right or you're right. So, and then he has to ask himself, well, what does he want? Does he want it to be true, or does he want it to be not true? And then he realizes that all he wants is for this magical thing that he's being offered to be true. And once that happens, then he's embarking on this, journey, on this adventure from which there's no way out. There's just no way out. And that's the struggle for him in Beggar's Kingdom. Once he realizes that he just is still trying to do this thing for which there is no roadmap.
For our listeners, we've been talking about the main character and the narrator, Julian, and Tiger Catcher, the first book, begins from his perspective in Hollywood, and he's leading a fairly comfortable life. That is until Josephine, the other half of this love story, comes along. I wonder if you could introduce our listeners to Josephine, the mysterious.
Yes. Well, the magic for me, that's really the first bit of magic in Julian's life. It's not the cave, and it's not the time travel. It's that in his regular, comfortable, sort of slightly, hooded lid life, suddenly this thing came in front of him that woke him up. That was the first bit of magic. And where did it happen? On stage. So it was the stage that gave him the first miracle, because the stage is sort of where all life begins. Think about how the stage features so prominently in our Western culture, in our Western literature, right, in our Western civilization. So she's up on the stage in front of him, and he's looking up at her, and suddenly he just sees her being something else for him. So he falls in love first with an image of this girl. She doesn't even look like a girl. Remember, she's playing a man the first time.
Yeah.
Yes, the first time she sees him. So it's not like, oh, she's so beautiful and he sees it. No, he sees something remarkable in her soul that she's giving to him through her theatrical performance. So it's art that changes the man. And that was why I introduced it that way. That's why it was so meaningful to me, because that was my whole point. Is that it was specifically that it was the stage and the theater and art, because the stage is like life. It's the stage is where all things begin and end.
Are you a bit of a theatre lover?
I'm a bit of a literature, I guess, lover. The stage, the theater, the plays. There's something marvelous that happens between actors because it's all told through dialogue, right? And that's the miracle about books is that you get to know inside of a man's soul. You don't just have the dialogue. You don't just have the conflict between people, but you have this other thing, which is, I know how Julian feels. I know how he feels about her. Like, he is very much in love with her, and she's a beautiful, friendly, open-hearted, warm, funny girl, and they fall in love. There's no question that, since we're seeing it from his point of view, that this is how it is. Now, clearly his friends are a little bit, they have some reservations. They're a little bit cooler, let's say, towards him. But we've seen that in everybody's life. You love somebody, you fall in love with somebody, and your friends are like, he's terrible for you. They're always like, oh, he's completely wrong for you. He's not the right one. And so the friends are all saying, hey, no, she's not the right one for you. There's something not right with her. But he doesn't think so. And certainly the image that she presents to him is one of unfailing affection and warmth and kindness and humor. She's a wonderful, beautiful, appealing, sexy girl. It's like I saw her from Julian's point of view, and he was completely enamored, with her.
Yeah, well, you mentioned the friends of Julian's, and even thinking back to the play, for our listeners, the opening scene where we meet Josephine for the first time is when Julian is with his partner, and are they on a triple date or a double date?
They're on a double date, so he's with his best friend, Ashton, and Ashton has a girlfriend, and Julian has a girlfriend, so the four of them are seeing it together. And what's amazing is that only Julian has this very strong positive reaction to her. The rest of them, it's almost like they have a premonition of what's to come. They have a negative reaction to her. They don't like her performance. They criticize her. The girls all feel like they're being petty, but it's not the pettiness. It's that they saw something clearly that they did not react to positively.
It was an omen.
It was like an omen, exactly. That their reaction to it was also a premonition, as his was, but of a different kind.
I mean, look, I don't blame them, because she was stepping in as the understudy for Nicole Kidman. A little nod to our Aussie readers, to your Aussie readers, which is great.
Yeah.
But yeah, I wanted to say that I think the characters, especially the side characters, bring a lot of light and humour to this tumultuous affair. What's it like, jumping or switching between the drama and the comedy?
Well, that to me was life. I wanted to make it humorous too, and you see, even in Beggar's Kingdom, though it's a much more serious story, there's so much comedy there. There's just so much, and the same thing here. When you live your life generally, even during the toughest of times, people still somehow manage to make jokes, right? Sometimes it's gallows humor, sometimes it's a little bit dark humor, but there's always a sense of humor in your life. I think it's almost unnatural when you have a story where there is no humor, even when terrible things are happening. And so certainly the friends do bring a little bit of comedy, and they amuse. And also the comedy is the tool that I use to show that there's a good relationship there, that Ashton and Julian are the best of friends, the closest of buddies for a long time, and that Julian has a good relationship with Ashton's girlfriend, and that he tries to be a good guy to even his girlfriend that he's had, because he's met someone new, but he's still trying to do right by the girl that he's with. He doesn't want to just lead her on or pretend that something hasn't happened. He wants to end one thing and begin another. And I sort of wanted to show him in a certain light by doing these things.
Yeah, definitely. They're good buddies.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And so I'm curious then, what can readers expect from the third installment, Inexpressible Island? How much can you reveal, Paullina?
Inexpressible Island.
Is it inexpressible?
It's inexpressible. It is one of my... I can't even. I'm gonna cry just thinking about it. It's one of the things that I've written. Again, I know. I keep asking everyone just to trust me and to stay with me and to read these stories. But I mean, A Beggar's Kingdom is tragic and full of sorrow and like joy, and there is, like I say, humor. But there's, it's a dark book because it's the middle book. There's so much that happens in it, and there's so much that's revealed to us about Josephine, and so much that's revealed to us about Ashton and about Riley and about Julian and Devi and all these people that we've come to know through the Tiger Catcher. But when you get to an expressible, that's when the whole thing just really comes down to you, and you kind of see what it is. But only then you see what it is. But all the pieces are going to fall into place. Like all the things that you think, all the threads that I'm keeping, you say, well, is that ever going to be paid off? Everything will be paid off. All the questions will be answered. Everything.
Well, there you go. We've got that to look forward to. It's very exciting, very mysterious.
Those are full of tremendous love and passion and war and friendship.
God, so
everything.
Exciting.
Every single thing there is. It's a Pandora's box in Expressible Island.
And so, we are called Good Reading Magazine, so I couldn't let you leave today without talking a little bit about reading.
Yes.
And I wonder then what your favourite authors are. I know it's a big question. And favourite books. Who inspires you? Who influences you?
I have so many people. And so as a young child, we spoke a little bit about the people whom I loved and who inspired me. And now in my grown-up life, I tend to read a lot of nonfiction and memoirs and biographies because my work, it's hard for me when I'm writing to read fiction because I don't want to be too influenced. But also, it's not even about that. It's also about getting into other people's stories. When you're deep inside your own story, then to read somebody else's story, the worst thing that can happen is if it's really great, because it's going to take you out of your story and you're going to be in their world, in their life, in their characters. So I force myself not to do it because fiction is like my first love, and I don't do it. But I also love biographies, so I read a lot of I'm the girl for celebrity memoirs. There's a celebrity memoir out there. But I love John Irving. I love John Steinbeck, all the Johns, I love Bret Easton Ellis. I love Jay McInerney. Like I love all the modern guys who wrote about sort of contemporary angst. I love Steve Martin. He's a wonderful writer. He writes beautiful, beautiful books. I love David Sedaris. I think he's amazing. Nora Ephron is one of my favorite writers. I can read Nora Ephron, and all her essays, her books, her novels, everything that she writes is just amazing. The nonfiction stuff that Joan Didion wrote was very beautiful. I love Dominic Dunn. Like I just read all his stuff. I was a very big OJ follower, so all the books on the OJ Simpson trial. But my favorite was Dominic Dunn's book about the trial when he lived there. So, so they inspire me. I always see their Stephen King. I loved him too, especially his early stuff. He was compulsively readable. That's hard to find. Michael Crichton is very smart. Michael Crichton has that thing that I love, where he's got a lot of scientific and yet a very good strong story narrative, in his books. But they're all based in medicine and science and technology. It's very interesting to me.
Thank you for that.
Yeah.
Well, Paullina, was there anything else that you wanted to go over before we wrapped up today?
No, we had a beautiful, beautiful interview, Emma, and I just wanted to. I'm very happy. I guess the only thing I wanted to say is, look, I know how my readers feel about Tatiana and Alexander. I know it because they tell me. I know it because I felt it myself when I read the books, and also when I wrote my screenplay for the books. When I go back into the books, when I listen to them on audio, I understand. I'm the first one who felt it. I had to feel it first before my readers could feel it. But I guess I would like to see if there was a way that we could all move on, because otherwise it's almost like I'm never going to be able to write again, because everything that I do, it always gets compared to that, and which I don't mind if But except that it's always gets compared, I guess, in that way where it's not as good or it's not as great, or I'm never going to love anything as much as I love that. And so it becomes like a double-edged sword. On the one hand, I love that they love Tatiana and Alexander because I love them too, and I love them still. That's never going to go away. But on the other hand, I want us kind of all to move forward. And for me, like a Lone Star, for me, it was just a beautiful book to write, and it was just heartbreaking, and I loved writing that book. And again, it had new characters, had a new love story, but these books particularly, because they're so epic, and there are 3 of them, I really feel stronger about these books than I felt about any book since The Bronze Horseman. And I guess that's one of the things that I would like the readers to know, is how I myself feel about Julian and Josephine, and I really am very sort of passionately emotional about them.
Yeah, so it's a big compliment and kind of a curse at the same time to be.
Well, I always say it's a burden, and it's a great burden and a great privilege just to write books for a living. And I'm so lucky that I have this thing which people have responded to. You know, I'm not going to begrudge that. Exactly. It's a beautiful thing. That's a life thing for me. So.
Well, yeah, this seems like it's the perfect trilogy for people to sort of latch onto and maybe move on with.
Yes, with new characters and then in a new world and a new love story, but still powerful and epic and emotional and heartbreaking. So.
Well, Paullina, thank you so much.
Thank you
for
so
joining
much,
me.
Emma. Really enjoyed that.
You can find The Tiger Catcher on the Good Reading Magazine bookstore or at any good bookshop. Paullina, thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Emma. It was a pleasure to be here. Thank you.